And so people have, been asking recently about um, other content, and of course, uh, I made the promise because I like to deliver what the audience is looking for at the time. I did make the promise that I'm going to go ahead and feature a Ghislaine Maxwell video. So that's going to be upcoming on the channel. Um, it'll be one of the only official videos on that topic for a while, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's going to cover a lot of the real important aspects of the Ghislaine Maxwell case people have been looking forward to. Of course, a little bit later after that, once we cross the 350 threshold, essentially, there will finally then be a podcast, and the podcast is going to be directly on the content of, Schulte, smiley face murders, topics that have been discussed for a while. But, the team is very small, and we expanded a little bit more. We've got some more outreach now as far as in the networking community and so on, doing things that have to be done. So that'll be coming. And then, of course, coming up here is something I've personally been looking forward to. It'll probably be a little bit later, actually, in the day and whatnot. But I've been looking forward to this whole Mystery Island thing. So I'm going to do kind of a change of pace video a little bit. It's going to be a subject that I've been very interested in and I've been researching a lot. And it's a mystery island that essentially went missing. And so this is a topic that I'm very interested in covering some aspects on why the island actually went missing and so on. It'd be very surprising to people who have never seen anything to do with this kind of scenario before. And I invite everybody to spread it far and wide, get it out to the wider community, because a lot of people don't know about the missing islands in our world right now, and they are very, very important. So look forward to that. And of course, other channels such as It's a Crime, Tender Life, Grizzly sometimes as well, they are a part of the original kind of reconstruction now, what you might call the American government and so forth. They are involved in that too. And so my influence extends into that arena, and so I'm a lot more busy than most people. Like, I don't have time to speak to everybody in the comments and things like that. But once a few more thresholds are reached and we pass that amount of subscribers, I will be interacting more often and updating people on key issues that are ongoing. Anyway, this whole topic is one that's very close to me. I'm interested in the aspect of islands that go missing. And why do they disappear exactly? And that'll lead to some other subjects I'll cover a bit later on, including, talking about things like film. X-Men especially, Disney in particular with Star Wars and different things. Star Trek, which is a big one. Those will all be topics also on this channel as time goes on. But for the time being right now, I'm specifically focused in on these very, very key cases. So look forward to Ghislaine Maxwell, which is a big one. Don't miss that. Definitely make sure everybody is able to get underneath that and see what's going on there. Okay? But also this case that I've been working on regarding this missing island. And it's kind of ironic. You never think about an island that would just go missing or vanish for no real explained purpose or reason, right? But this happens to be exactly that case.
Here it is, folks.
This is very
one of the
interesting.
biggest cases
And I guarantee
in modern
nobody's
times.
ever going to see something
Ghislaine
like this
Maxwell
again. So
was
definitely
found guilty on 5 of 6 counts.
get this out there, spread the word on it.
Trafficking, SA, and assault. Facing 65 years in federal prison after being found guilty in the New York federal court on federal racketeering charges and trafficking. On December 29th, 2021, Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty on 5 of the 6 charges in regards to SA, trafficking of minors, human trafficking overall, and other cases directly linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Born in December of 1961, Ghislaine Maxwell, once one of Hillary Clinton's strongest supporters and vocal strategists, and also daughter of publishing tycoon Robert Maxwell, has fallen from her ivory tower. A bombshell just dropped about a juror who started talking publicly, giving rise to a plausible claim that he concealed aspects of his criminal past during jury questioning. Maxwell, age 60, was convicted very recently of trafficking and a myriad of charges that establish long-time SA with many different minors, eccentric parties, giant hotel suites filled with cocktails everywhere, and just horrendous abuse and torture. The testimony of 4 other women who said they played a role in setting up the abuse to occur also testified against Epstein at the trial. The British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell has been officially convicted now, as of Wednesday, of luring minors, including underage boys and girls, to be SA'd for more than $70,000 or higher on behalf of millionaire and self-proclaimed billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell is the longtime associate of accused SA trafficker Jeffrey Epstein and also Bill Clinton. That's right. New York CNN, amid the jury's official press conference, declared at the federal court that Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty on 5 of 6 counts relating to her role in the Jeffrey Epstein SA escapade of minors between 1994 all the way up until 2004 or later. Of all the victims on the list, Ghislaine Maxwell is reportedly closest to Prince Andrew, who is the Duke of York, and of course their other uncle, Prince William. Former British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell on Wednesday was convicted of recruiting and grooming underage minors, including girls and also boys, with the late financier Jeffrey Epstein between 1994 up until 2018 being the latest time. Ghislaine Maxwell was born on Christmas Day in 1961. January 15th of 2022, the case was updated again, but Maxwell is no longer going to fight to protect the undercover identity of 8 new John Does who allegedly had SA'd all of the minors on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein. She was a wealthy British socialite who has since fallen from grace. Investigators discover a trove of explicit photos on display at the Jeffrey Epstein estate in Palm Beach. Here, Maxwell, who was literally 60 years old, is found guilty of SA and major trafficking of minors all the way down to age 12, females as well as males, and 3 related counts of conspiracy. She faces currently 65 years in the federal penitentiary, followed by other repercussions. Ghislaine Maxwell, the former British socialite, is now on the roll. Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted in the Jeffrey Epstein case on December 29th of 2021, has told the official British press about her escapades luring the underage children and minors into these large, enormous parties where they would be SA'd by various accomplices. She has very large, Ghislaine Maxwell, of course, has very large endowments, and dark brown hair reveals Virginia Giuffre. Convicted longtime Jeffrey Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell is no longer fighting to keep secret the identities of 8 other accomplices who are now in the official case. My, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Epstein accuser attorneys cheer the arrest of Maxwell as a monster to society, calling her the architect of the largest SA ring in world history. Ghislaine Maxwell is a socialite, the jury barked. Last week they convicted Jeffrey Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, of SA and major human trafficking across more than 5 separate states. So this is a ring, folks, that went on nationwide with just all of these victims. And wouldn't you know it, every single one of the victims were, of course, minors in this particular case. In Ghislaine Maxwell's official bid for a new trial, she was hit with a whole new case with fresh allegations. 3 days later, a car that carried her 15-year-old brother Michael crashed into a lorry along the foggy Oxfordshire Road, apparently. Giuffre has accused Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine, as well as Prince Andrew, of SAing her as well, all the way back when she was aged 10 or younger. So this has been going on for just decades. And of course, she finally doesn't care anymore. She got caught. And there she is, of course, with one of her unwitting accomplices at the time, Taylor Swift, who had no idea, what a real prude and an absolute monster in the end they were standing next to. Ghislaine Maxwell will go down in history as just one of the most atrocious traffickers I'm sure that we will ever encounter. And so this is a very important case to cover. And there's more that will definitely be said on each part of this case as we go through it. Epstein accusers call his protector and procurer, Ghislaine Maxwell, an absolute wench and liar. Ghislaine Maxwell's net worth has fallen all the way down to nearly the single digits. Ghislaine Maxwell hid in plain sight. The Vanity Fair cover accuses, officially in their new party update. The pre-arrest trial for Ghislaine Maxwell had more than 5 of her famous friends, including Barbara Walters, in the chorus line. Where is Ghislaine today? Where in the world is Ghislaine Maxwell? And there's, of course, Jack Morphanius also discussing his connections to Ghislaine. And I don't think that Morphanius and these other people were as deeply involved as Maxwell is. I believe now, folks, that Ghislaine Maxwell, being the tyrannical, witch that she is, I believe she roped in a lot of these people into the Clinton scheme overall. I think that that's becoming very, very obvious with the amount of evidence that's starting to come out. And there she is, of course, using her boy toys over there, including Richard. She apparently was also very close to John Acosta, which is very interesting. Not really a surprise, but interesting. Thank you. Prosecutors state there is evidence to show Maxwell knew the victims directly, including a 14-year-old minor who were below the age of consent and knew they were at the time that they were traveled and trafficked between Epstein's homes, which includes his posh estate of Palm Beach, Florida, his Manhattan town home, and residence among Santa Fe, New Mexico, and London. Epstein himself, at a Manhattan federal lockup in August 2019, decided to take his own life a month after his arrest on trafficking charges. Authorities had charged Ghislaine Maxwell in July of 2020, arresting her after tracking her entire entourage to a $1 million New Hampshire estate where she had been holed up, apparently for the entire coronavirus. Maxwell pleaded not guilty and also vehemently denies any wrongdoing to this day. The 59-year-old British socialite, who was jailed in Brooklyn since her arrest, has called the claims against her absolute rubbish. Ghislaine Maxwell's official lawyers and family state she was Epstein's pawn and now is paying a blood price to satisfy public desire to see someone go down. The first order of business Monday is finalizing the selection of 12 jurors and 6 alternates who hear Ghislaine Maxwell's case shortly. Jurors will be picked from a pool of 40 to 60 potentials who made it through initial questioning. U.S. District Judge Allison Nathan instructed the prosecution and defense to submit lists of potential jurors they wish excluded from trial. In selecting primary jurors, the defense has 10 preemptory challenges and the prosecution has 6, Nathan had stated at the courtroom. For alternates, each side will get 3 challenges. So in other words, they are aware of the fact of what people have been saying, around the press and in similar places, and they do not desire anything about the final trial to become a shouting match. So in that sense, they're making it very, very clear and simplified that each side gets to select, certain people to go ahead and come to be a part of the jury process in a certain sense, but they cannot be people who know Maxwell personally. They cannot be people who know anyone involved in the trial personally. And I don't know how it's truly possible to ultimately do that in the area that they are in, because at least one person, because of how widespread the story is going to have most likely run into Ghislaine Maxwell. But they are not going to be on the actual jury. The people who are involved in the deliberations and who are going to be on each side of this trial are going to be people that are unrelated, who have really no familiarity with Ghislaine Maxwell, and they do not know the New York Daily News. They do not know any of the people that she's been hobnobbing with. But in any case, they're doing that because they realize there is a significant bias in the area of New York due to how widespread this story has gotten. And it makes sense, to divide up the jury in that way, to be able to have a proper airing of grievances on both sides in the proper, chambers. But again, I'll say it right now. There's almost nobody in that specific neighborhood who has not been aware of Ghislaine Maxwell on a personal level, because the New York Post made a big mistake by lambasting her name literally everywhere, all across New Jersey, all across Vermont, and all across New York City. There's nearly no one who's going to not have heard of these people. But the point is, it is going to be deliberated as a fair trial, because we already know, although Ghislaine Maxwell is 100% guilty, of course, there's a lot of people on both sides who will want to be slinging their proverbial mud, because it is as simple as it gets. It hit the fan in Brooklyn. And I can see why they're doing that. They have one side will do the alternates, they have another side in who will do kind of the cleanup. But they need to keep the press out. If they are really serious about the District Court of Appeals and so forth not having to keep going through this song and dance, they need to keep the press out of the pretrial conference. That has been my stated position on it, and many people's stated position on it for a while now. They need to keep the press out of the pretrial conference. If they want to have some local media who are from the area that are not a part of the New York Post or New York Times, for example, and similar places, then that's fine. But don't have everybody at the pretrial conference. Keep it out of the limelight until the official trial is starting up and they're starting to have everything set for the table. And I'm not saying that to be positional. I'm saying that because it is the quickest way overall, due to how corrupt these people are that are involved. It is the quickest and easiest way overall for both sides to be heard and to stop, the mudslinging, because everybody in that whole area of New York at this point has a bone to pick in one way or another with Ghislaine Maxwell, and the circus that this is. And I'm just saying it makes sense to me when I look at it that way, that as long as they're going to keep most of the press out of the pretrial conference, I'm not talking about the actual trial, I'm talking about the pretrial conference, then we can get to the bottom finally of what truly happened here. And there are some key comments I need to make on that. But it's obvious that what happened here is not Ghislaine Maxwell's, canary in a coal mine merry-go-round anymore. Nobody cares about that, or they'd be watching CNN News all the time, and that's where they get their 10 o'clock drama. This is about, serious, real topics now. We're talking all the people who were abused by Epstein. All of the people that Ghislaine Maxwell probably over her whole career has groomed to be abused in all these different issues. And that can only come from keeping, I would say, just certain elements of the press out of the pretrial conference. So thank you. More to look at. 4 ways Ghislaine Maxwell's elite SA ring trial had already been rigged, or was going to be rigged. The trial of the century begins today, in which the world's most powerful elite are set to be named and shamed as participants of a massive elite SA and assault ring. However, if the deep state would get in the way, the outcome of the trial would have been rigged in their favor. Of course, we find out later they were ordered to unseal the names of the co-conspirators. So that didn't work out well, but we'll go over that a little bit later. There's going to be more, videos on this specific case. At this time, there will be no live coverage at the trial as it unfolds. The few mentions we see on the nightly news were approved by the powers that be. Much of what will be revealed in the court records is deemed too sensitive for the public, and therefore the press. It's going to be a media ghost town, they claim. Our media will certainly be covering everything about Omicron, though. What a coincidence. There has yet to be a single Omicron hospitalization. The federal judge over the Ghislaine Maxwell case is Allison Nathan. The lead prosecutor in the Ghislaine Maxwell case is Maureen Comey, the daughter of James Comey, now the late James Comey. There have been a few people calling for more coverage and transparency in the trial. Posobiec is clearly one of them. Technofog will do all of the heavy lifting, but very few are exposing this debacle ahead of time. Even other conservative sites have barely mentioned this so far. What's going on? Have patriots given up? Is Omicron that big of a distraction? I see more stories on conservative news outlets about Jussie Smollett's trial that's going on now than anything to do with Ghislaine Maxwell. And then it hit me. Of course, very few are giving this coverage. They really don't think anything can come from it. But they are, of course, wrong. There is a lot that can come from it. Because when those names got exposed, there was a good amount of names that really got exposed. It started the whole entire thing beginning to unravel. Powerful politicians, celebrities, and members of the British royal family are very nervous as the identities of Ghislaine Maxwell's unnamed co-conspirators are set to become public next. Maxwell worked as Jeffrey Epstein's pimp for years, and the DOJ knew they were supplying underage children as young as 12 or younger to the rich and powerful, but refused to do anything. The reports are that last month Assistant U.S. Attorney Allison Moe asked the U.S. District Judge to mask the names, but Judge Nathan ordered the government to disclose all co-conspirator statements it intends to offer at trial. Federal prosecutors must disclose the identities of any unnamed co-conspirators whose names they plan to refer to at trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. The government argues that there is no risk of surprise because it currently intends to introduce the alleged co-conspirator statements of only 2. At the same time, however, the government proffers that it may change its view as it prepares for trial. The court thus finds the government's reassurance very hollow and insufficient to ensure that the defendant may adequately prepare a defense. Moreover, the government has not alleged that disclosure here would create potential danger to co-conspirators or risk compromising any investigation. It merely argues that disclosing the identities risks harm to the government. Judge Nathan was skeptical about the claim. The government provides no explanation for the purported harm, and none of it is apparent here. The court thus orders that this concern alone does not outweigh the risk of surprise to the defendant in this case or the need of the parties to litigate co-conspirator issues in advance of the trial. The identity of Epstein's unknown co-conspirators has always been intriguing. One of them named, of course, that came out is none other than Kevin Spacey. And that should not be any surprise. That's right. And this has been a very interesting case all the way along. So we're going to talk about it a little more. Thank you.
By the way, just so you guys are aware, I'm not wanting this to be like me speaking all the time on certain cases. So we've reached a point, that's right, folks. We've reached a point now in player base as far as the amount of people who are, I call it player base, but just really the audience, the audience we have on this platform, that we can start really adding some more real interactivity into certain elements. And so I want you guys to go ahead, if you see anything interesting, really anything that comes to mind, or maybe something that you just noticed that is very important about Ghislaine Maxwell, and about similar kind of suspects that are related with Ghislaine Maxwell's trial and so on, to be sure to post that. in the comments, and keep that very much at the forefront of things. Keep it in mind as we're doing updates here, And then, of course, you'll see and notice in the description box, there's also an email address that's opening up. It's kind of the official mail center where you can send in comments, questions, suggestions, feedback. We love to receive all types of feedback. And really, if you guys really truly do notice some things that are very interesting about Ghislaine Maxwell and about the case and similar, go ahead and post those. Don't be afraid to put them out there. Put them right there under the description of the video, and then I will go ahead and start looking through certain comments when there's more time to do so, and the ones that are the most poignant, the ones that really highlight the most important points of the case. I will feature them live on the video and be giving away some kind of prizes afterwards for the comments that are the most interesting and the most important feedback that is received on each of these videos. I will be putting those in a highlight reel, and then we will choose from the list who needs to have the biggest attention. And of course, as you know, the Ghislaine Maxwell case covers at least 4 different states. And those states are, of course, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. So once again,
there we go.
Feel free to add to the
Ghislaine
discussion.
Maxwell had some
we'll see
interesting
you,
accomplices.
In the upcoming updates, right here.
And this has
on
been
JTC
coming up
channel.
for a while. New Jersey
Thanks again.
man is charged with many S offenses going all the way back to 1990 in a cold case of a victim who was found directly behind a dumpster. A man was arrested for SAing an assault on a female victim whose dead body was basically dug up near a dumpster behind the Wildwood restaurant. In a cold case, 32 years old, Jeffrey Rosado, or Jeffrey Louis Rosado, age 62, of Millville, New Jersey, was arrested Friday for SA and many more crimes against Susan Nager Smith, whose remains were found in the Jersey Shore town in May of 1990. The Cape May County prosecutor announced. Rosado faces additional charges as the investigation continues and expands. Nagersmith of Camel, New York, had been vacationing in the shore town with her friends on Memorial Day weekend. The autopsy revealed she had been the victim in the brutal assault. The cold case was finally cracked after new technology allowed law enforcement to match a DNA sample. So in other words, this was, folks, very close to where the Pine Barrens is, right? And what's interesting is that if you really kind of study this, at least for a minute, you go over here, you see this place where Jerry Rosado lived, and it looks like a murder house. This is the last place that anybody would in any way want to be caught living, so to speak. And if you really investigate it, it kind of proves the reasons why that is. But there is an estate, kind of a mansion over here that is not that far from Ghislaine Maxwell's robust, posh estate that she has in New Jersey. And so I'd like to kind of cover this for a bit. All the mailboxes here, of course, are unmarked. And they got this unbelievable blue truck, of course, right here, out in front, which is just kind of unusual to say the least. And the houses over here, they're unmarked houses. And that can never be a good thing. When they don't put the address, just right out in front of the actual house to indicate what type of issue you're dealing with, and they just have like kind of an abandoned mailbox, that's not ever a good sign, ultimately. But it's good. You can see here they have kind of a pool hall area. They have something over here that they were trying to use for barbecues and so forth. And I get the sense now, Jerry Rosado, given his history and the amount of crimes he's been involved with, they were doing a little bit more than barbecues out here on the yard. No question about it. So thank you. Once again, we can learn a lot from this. Ghislaine Maxwell, it appears, was tied to the most shady people you can imagine across New Jersey state. She really was. All right, here we go. And this is just showing again and showcasing this was indeed confirmed to be Jerry Rosato. Of course, his real name Jerry Louis Rosato. And that was where they found that they apparently had lived. So he lived some strange locations, very close to just horrible places, like a vacant lot, a shack that's abandoned that nobody's ever been inside. And Millville, New Jersey, you can imagine. Yeah. The Millville or mill part says it all. Truly does. Thank you. Ghislaine Maxwell's co-conspirators are now outlined in official court documents. So I will not be covering this for too long of a time, but there is a lot of important updates with the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Ghislaine Maxwell's co-conspirators and accusations are in the court records officially today. The 1953 trust, Harvey Weinstein, Sean Carter, Darren Indicus, Richard Kahn, the Weinstein Company and Weinstein Corporation as an official defendant, Miramax LLC, the Walt Disney Company, Def Jam Recordings, Recreation B, Universal Music Group, Beyonce G. Knowles, Kanye D. West, Terrence Thornton, Black Cube Limited, Vivino S.A., Dwayne Center, Jane Lou Pama, Young Money Entertainment, Good Music, Shelley Massenberg, David Boyce, Robert Kelly, Milton Brown, Marcelo Clore, Sprint Corporation, Viacom CBS, Virgil Apas, Questar International, Tular Saliba Corporation, Ghislaine Maxwell in her personal capacity, Parkwood Entertainment, the City of New York and the New York Police Department, Sir Philip Green. Yeah, they finally got Green in there. And it's amazing that we can also see Beyonce is in this case and it dragged in Kanye West. I did not see those types of names coming, folks. So this is going to get very, very interesting pretty quick here. John Doe's 1 through 100 and the corporations John Doe's 1 through 100, including those who worked at Sony Records, Disney Corporation, and otherwise. Very interesting so far. So Ghislaine Maxwell had interesting co-conspirators, including a higher district court judge, Kevin Spacey, of all things, and others that went to the Epstein Island all the time. Bill Clinton apparently was also named. What was the defense's case? Speaking for the first time since the trial began, Ghislaine Maxwell told U.S. District Judge Allison Nathan that she would not testify. Your Honor, the government has not proven the case beyond a reasonable doubt to me, so I will not testify. Defendants in U.S. criminal trials are not required to testify, as the burden of proof is always on the prosecutors. During the trial, Maxwell's defense sought to portray her four accusers as not credible and were motivated by the prospect of a payout from compensation funds existing for Epstein's victims. One of Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys read a stipulation that indicated an attorney had told one of the accusers that cooperating with prosecutors would actually help her case. Among the witnesses called by the defense was the psychologist Elizabeth Loftus, whose testimony challenged the recollections of the accusers. What are the charges? Maxwell faces an effective life sentence if convicted of grooming minors for SA and further abuse. She is being accused by multiple victims now of recruiting teenagers and young women to give SA massages to Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, who is the billionaire mogul. One woman has said she was coerced by the pair into many encounters with numerous famous celebrities. Ghislaine Maxwell faces an effective life sentence if convicted of all charges. Prosecutors have kept the case focused on Maxwell's interactions with 4 girls from 1994 to 2004. During this period, Maxwell was romantically involved with and then worked for Jeffrey Epstein directly. Luggage and do other chores as well around the estate. He was to return to the stand on Tuesday. Authorities charged Ghislaine Maxwell in July of 2020, arresting her after tracking her to a $1 million New Hampshire posh estate in the backwoods, where she had holed up for the entire coronavirus pandemic. Ghislaine Maxwell pleaded not guilty and vehemently denies wrongdoing. She has been sentenced and imprisoned in Brooklyn since her arrest, calling the claims against her absolute rubbish and nonsense. And the family says she was Epstein's pawn. The wealthy Oxford-educated Ghislaine Maxwell is daughter of the British newspaper magnate Robert Maxwell, who was world famous on the circuit and died in 1991 after falling off his yacht. It named Lady Ghislaine Maxwell near the Canary Islands. Robert Maxwell, whose holdings at the time included the entirety of the New York Daily News, was facing allegations that he illegally looted his business pension funds. Ghislaine holds U.S. and French citizenship. And this doesn't matter as she was repeatedly denied bail afterwards. So, the interesting part about all of this is, fame comes at a great cost. And anyone who says, folks, that they can be, claimed to be super famous or similar things, it's just guaranteed, always, that they have sold their lives away in some way, that they have given something up to be able to have any kind of real power in this world. And Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were some of the most premier examples of this in action. They are accused, it says in the trial docket and the details for the actual court case, of just abuse and assault and things, of essentially more than 20 plus victims. And this is fairly unheard of. It's going back over several decades. So at least maybe 30 or more years of this going on. And so it just goes to show you, folks, no matter what they say, crime does not pay. And when it comes to fame and getting real fame and being world famous and so on, it is true that you have to sell your life away. The proverbial sell your soul canard is indeed, in fact, real. And this is what really is interesting when you look at these cases. And Ghislaine Maxwell is one of the most famous of all. So this is going to be covered kind of in a little bit of, extensive detail to kind of showcase truly what was going on. And for good reason, so people truly can learn and take a lot away from this that they wouldn't otherwise understand, and recognize this has been happening for as long as anyone has been working the fashion circuit or anything else in New York City. So thank you again. A little more is going to be coming on this as well. Pervert Jeff Epstein had a 6-foot portrait of naked Ghislaine Maxwell and much more at the underage pool party he did all the time on the ranch. Jeffrey Epstein had a ridiculous portrait of a naked Miss Maxwell, apparently as a centerpiece for the underage pool parties in the area in New Mexico. The ridiculous X-rated painting of Maxwell was placed in the huge official area for bath and waterworks, which came complete with an indoor pool, group shower, and hot tub, according to the IT advisor that first uncovered the sensational plots. Maxwell is accused of acting as Epstein's honorary accomplice. It's alleged that the depraved billionaire Jeffrey Epstein entertained many trafficked girls and others, as well as their guests, at his 10,000-acre desert ranch. The consultant claims there are pictures of Epstein with Prince Andrew in the Commons area and even John Travolta, as well as a interesting encounters room where all the furniture and artwork were naked. There was this huge painting of Ghislaine Maxwell, which was 6 foot by 6 foot on a chair leaning back. Most hideous thing you've ever seen. But he had so many photographs, there were pictures literally all over the entire estate. John Travolta, Bill Clinton, and many others, even Prince Andrew, as well as Kevin Spacey, no doubt, were featured in photographs among the common areas. He liked to brag about all of the people that he hobnobbed with. So Jeffrey Epstein was not only just manic, he was an absolute prude. I mean, he was one of the biggest perverts probably in the whole entire news empire. He was really, really extravagant and very eccentric, for sure. Maxwell is right beside her associate Jeffrey Epstein, who she is accused in the many court cases of procuring underage victims nationwide. The blurry photograph shows a special encounters room, complete with an incredible gallery of Ghislaine Maxwell all over all of Epstein's walls. When he ran into trouble in Florida, that's when the photos came down. There was one room that was just so unbelievable that it had embroidered pillows, couches, statues, and sculptures that were all dedicated to Ghislaine Maxwell. She had an office. The shower filled with things was designed to have underage parties and unbelievable trafficking networks coming through the area. And, everybody has a few magazines or so forth. I don't think there's any guy who can't say that they have not had like a few magazines or something in their rooms, right? But this is just beyond belief. There were actual pictures of various celebrities and people in different stages without any kind of clothing on or any clothes, all over Jeffrey Epstein's famous shower room. The show pillows were piled up everywhere, right against the wall, for Ghislaine Maxwell to find them. And you can see here, folks, this is the hall where a number of these photos were seen. And they had various celebrities in there. I think even one of John Travolta, allegedly. And these celebrities and people would always be without clothes. And Ghislaine Maxwell would be featured there prominently. And it was just one of the most bizarre kind of house of horror type shows I think it could probably go on. Very unusual. I'm not going to get into commenting on all the things there. There's plenty of essay, plenty of real key problems going on. The photos were taken by a contractor who worked at the house in the early 2000s, who said Epstein had secret cameras in every single one of the showers in different rooms among the veranda. Ghislaine Maxwell, age 57, is accused of procuring the young victims for the disgraced financier and taking them out to engage in much of the trafficking abuse later. She has not been seen since Epstein was allegedly found deceased in his New York prison cell from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The New York Times claimed the convicted offender confided in scientists that he planned to be very, very helping 20 women get pregnant and so on, to improve the human race, allegedly, they claimed in the official news article. He says most of Epstein's staff could never abide by his antics, as they treated them all like dirt. Epstein died officially in his jail cell in August, awaiting trial for child trafficking charges and many more abuse allegations. A large golden crucifix was hung by chains in the mansion's main awning. A giant chess set on the lawn outside with a fountain was hidden in the background. This happened to be one of Jeffrey Epstein's favorite gallerias to go and do photographs in front of. So you can imagine, Ghislaine Maxwell was just about as strange as you can possibly get, and very, very creepy, no doubt. But Jeffrey Epstein was almost on a whole nother level. And when you look at this, folks, you can most certainly see why. He fired some woman on the top spot for not handing him a roll in the kitchen. There was a tray of rolls and they were having breakfast, and Jeffrey Epstein wanted one, and she said, "They are right there, go get it." He would throw a royal fit even when Prince Andrew was attending some of these events. And you would have to change, that you would see that there were a bin of booties near the entrance, and you would always need to change into them if you were to even enter his mansion. He would only wear hoodies and t-shirts. They lived in fear of being fired if they saw anything going on with Jeffrey Epstein. So they definitely did not speak aloud very often. Another source claims that some of Epstein's staff were so afraid of him that they still do not believe he could be deceased, and suffer a similar sort of case of Stockholm syndrome, where people who have been kidnapped develop irrational feelings for their abductor. Lines of oils, lotions, and soaps surrounded the entire bath arena and the shower. And the shower was used for like 10 people or something at a time. It was the most just strange house you could ever be inside of. The most strange shower, the most strange, bathroom, and the rooms, and they were covered in all of these photographs and paintings that are really bizarre. They added, some employees think he might be alive, so they expect him to show up on Little St. James Island. They don't believe he is gone for some reason, so they think that he'll, be right along. It might be stupidity or Stockholm syndrome or a real-life Bond villain who could break out of federal prison. Ghislaine Maxwell has always denied any wrongdoing, of course. So, and that's just the unbelievable reality of where he lived. He lived in this place, and he was very, very infamous for going in depth with this stuff. And so when you look at this, Ghislaine Maxwell lived for a while right here near some very shady people. This is a New Jersey road, and this is just about as shady as you can get, because this is the area where a lot of drug traffickers would hang out. Certainly some of the top cocaine traffickers in the industry would hang out near this road. And some of the houses over here are just kind of like, older, almost Newark style Victorian houses. They look like maybe somebody from Bad Boys 2 was living there, literally. And that's what you could say about the house that she was in. that was one of the houses she was in right there. Is one of these older abandoned Newark houses, interestingly enough, right here downtown. And if you go down and you start to research the area, you can see it is just very, very creepy as all get. It's just all sorts of unmarked cars, there's all sorts of unmarked houses, no address listed except on the front gate or on the mailbox. And this just happened to be right here during Christmas time. So Ghislaine Maxwell lived out here. She lived near some of these serial killers who are famous for going into the Pine Barrens, And the type of people she hung out with all the time were these exact type of people. And they were no joke. Here's some other interesting folks over here. It seems like it's a quieter suburban neighborhood. But the types of people that they frequented, all these ridiculous parties, these events, these staging grounds, speaking functions, and things like that, are the exact opposite type of people you would ever desire to meet on the street. Let's put it that way. And some of them even frequented some of the large kind of Ramadan parties in New York Central Station. They would come out here to New Jersey, to this area in New Jersey, and they would hold some of their guest events and trafficking parties and things right here in this very strange neighborhood. They would have suburban house guests over. You just couldn't even make up unless it was from an Addams Family movie picture, is how bizarre some of these things would go sometimes. And Jeffrey Epstein was infamous for coming out here with Ghislaine Maxwell, and certainly with Jerry Rosado and similar people, and the same murderer, Robert, who killed all those victims in the Pine Barrens. So these people were, they were really, really bad. They were not at all the kind of people you want to ever be associated with. But Jeffrey Epstein, of course, was associated with all of these people. And Bill Clinton would come to these events. He would come out to some of these actual houses sometimes and attend some of these events. And he'd be like, we're going to do it for the troops, we're going to do it for politics. Everything must be for politics. So a very, very strange couple. I call the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell incident the official odd couple. That's what it is. And this is indeed where she was. She was there on Monterey Avenue for a long time, and she was right there, folks. She was just right there in central New York for a fact, with Lisa Ann Helden and many others. And they came there and they did some of the most just bizarre kind of virtual events and physical public events you can imagine. So thank you again. There will be more to cover, but certainly that will take place in the next video, of course. But Ghislaine and Maxwell, she was definitely one of the highest British socialites of the era, and also one of the most despicable, which of course led to their downfall, and quite an interesting history to leave behind, especially the origin story of how all this started. Thank you again. With Wednesday's guilty verdict in the SA and abuse trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, here's a look at what the once high-flyer Epstein confidant was accused of and what is next. Who were Ghislaine Maxwell's accusers? The prosecution hinged on the accusations of 4 victims: Annie Farmer, with the pseudonyms Jane, Kate, and Carolyn, as well, who are her friends and were teenagers at the time when Maxwell and Epstein exploited them in the 1990s all the way to 2005. On what charges was Ghislaine Maxwell convicted? The trial focuses on 6 counts. 1. Conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal assault and SA violence and crimes. Number 2, enticement of a minor to travel to engage in illegal SA in general. Number 3, conspiracy to transport minors with intent to engage in criminal S activity. Number 4, transportation of a minor with intent to engage in criminal encounters and activities. Number 5, SA trafficking conspiracy to commit trafficking. And number 6, SA trafficking of minors across interstate lines. She is convicted on all charges except the second, despite lawyers' assertions she was a patsy. Without public statements from the jurors who have yet to come forward, it is impossible to say why the second count did not convict Miss Maxwell. Maxwell was accused of having enticed Jane to New York City, arranging flights and many different types of gifts, as well as travel and hotels, knowing that Epstein would commit these crimes. During deliberations, the jury seemed to be hung up on this count, asking for a definition of enticement. How exactly do you pronounce Ghislaine? Ghislaine is pronounced with a hard G and a silent S. If it helps, the cover of the New York Post, run by Rupert Murdoch, states you can read it as guilty. How much prison time does Ghislaine Maxwell face now? The most serious count on which the 60-year-old Heiress was convicted carries up to 40 years or a life sentence in federal prison. The count on which she acquitted was fairly minor, carrying a 5-year maximum. So what's next for Ghislaine Maxwell? She needs to be sentenced, but a date has yet to be set. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell charged with perjury? Those counts are based on her answers during 2016 depositions in a settled suit brought by accuser Virginia Giuffre. She is accused of lying by saying, "I do not know anything about this." She's also accused of lying by saying she never recalls any of the SA or trafficking, which is, of course, underage sex trafficking. This is the trafficking of minors over interstate lines, folks. And what they don't mention here is they were taking these minors, there's a lot of victims, and they were traveling over various state boundary lines to new states, other parts of the East Coast. We're talking about Delaware, Vermont, Connecticut, you name it. And that's right, Epstein's private jet, his private airline, was actually used to actively traffic all these victims. So that's what makes this a very fascinating case as we kind of dig into the truth about it. After Epstein's demise, Ghislaine Maxwell withdrew from public activities like running an oceans charity. Her whereabouts became a subject of much speculation. Was that her at the restaurant with a book of CIA operatives in Southern California? Was she living in Britain or Paris or Massachusetts for a while? Prosecutors say she went into hiding in New Hampshire, where she was then arrested in her $1 million home. So has Ghislaine Maxwell been in prison the entire time? Yes, despite multiple requests for bail, Ghislaine Maxwell was deemed a flight risk and has spent most of it in federal lockup in Brooklyn. Well, thank goodness, because she actually was a part of taking more than 20-something minors over the span of their career to various parties where horrible, horrible things were conducted. We're talking about trafficking crimes, and they would take them into the back rooms, and they would get them on drugs, and all of the types of things you would only expect to hear about in the medieval ages, folks. That's what was going on back there. So, you can imagine. It's not really a surprise when we look back at it now. But at the time, this was shocking to the entire room. People couldn't believe what had gone on. Ghislaine Maxwell told the judge that she had no need to testify, as the prosecution failed to adequately prove their case. But that didn't fly, of course. They were romantically involved, Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein. But the timeline is unclear. She states she transitioned to being more of an employee, running the household affairs and dealing with everything as, a nanny would over an estate. This occurred in Florida, New Mexico, Manhattan, and their private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as Paris. Prosecutors introduced records that show Epstein had paid Ghislaine Maxwell $20 million over the 10-plus years and accused her of functioning as Epstein's masseuse and official accomplice. How is Prince Andrew involved? Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew, saying he essayed her and many others. She says Maxwell facilitated her meetings with Prince Andrew, who has denied that account. These accusations were left out of the trial. Andrew's name did come up in other testimony where the private jet was used, dubbed the Lolita Express. Who was Ghislaine Maxwell's husband? A mystery man. She was living with him when she was arrested in New Hampshire, but court records have now confirmed his actual real name. He did support her bail attempts, but was never spotted at the trial. She had transferred most of her assets out. So, of course, Prince Andrew was involved. There are other cases exposing Prince Andrew's corruption and his ties to this. He's been under investigation for a long time, and he apparently was compelled to resign from the European, Parliament. So there'll be more that will be covered on that. Just not to go into detail right now in this particular video, but there's definitely more that needs to be shared on that. According to a website, Ghislaine Maxwell was working through all of her books that she never read. The last one that she just had finished reading was Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. And they exposed it as a Sidney Powell, somebody who was in league with Sidney Powell. They tried to discredit it. She's also been making her way through Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials and a popular book called Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. So very interesting, folks. And a true, very true story. One of the most corrupt, trafficking criminals in American history. And there'll definitely be more that will come out about Ghislaine Maxwell, but certainly it is just amazing to see what happened, isn't it? And all of the victims that have been destroyed by Ghislaine Maxwell's many, many crimes. It's quite astounding. So thank you. Thank you once again.
So what do I think overall about the amazing allegations and the incredible story, to be exact, of Ghislaine Maxwell? I think every single one of the wealthy financiers out there has some skeletons in their closet, is what I will say about that. And it's no surprise that a wealthy heiress and baroness to a large investment firm, one of the largest in the world to be exact, and a major British socialite with a background in grooming underage victims, as well as children, and others in massage parlors, would end up being one of the world's largest traffickers and possible drug traffickers as well throughout history. I don't find that as surprising as others might in retrospect. And I've been waiting to work on this one for a while, folks, because I wanted to really get some of the underlying details of this really, really accurate, because Ghislaine Maxwell worked directly with the Clintons, of course, including Bill and Hillary Clinton. And at the time, while I was making certain Jelani Day's case became front page and really went viral, I was in the background looking at how to truly approach Ghislaine Maxwell and give it the emphasis that it absolutely needs and deserves. So Ghislaine, she is an example of wealthy heiresses and every British socialite out there of our modern era, one of the most corrupt in British socialite history, is what I would say, looking back, because it's not just the fact that she got into massive drug trafficking, private parties all the time on yachts, or stealing million-dollar mansions from various victims and victims' compensation funds, and also their pension funds, and stealing those dry. But also the fact that she went on very, very long trips with Jeffrey Epstein, one of the most, nuanced and clear-cut mavericks in the world of trafficking and exploitation of children that the world has literally ever seen. And Jeffrey Epstein today is long gone and likely testifying as well on more of the co-conspirators. If you follow the theory that he might still be alive out there, which is true, he may be. But nonetheless, Ghislaine Maxwell has fallen, and her long-awaited Iron Throne in the European United Kingdom, to be exact, has been taken away along with the spotlight. Just goes to show you, folks, no matter what anybody thinks, world fame is fleeting. It's there for the time that it's there, and then it's gone, never to reappear again. Sometimes it's only 5 years. Sometimes it's as long as 15 or so years. But world fame, those who are truly super famous, know that it indeed does have its expiration date and its toll. Because as you know, no socialite and no British, Shakespearean Heiress, the likes of Ghislaine Maxwell, can ever come around, nor can they exist without that simple proven fact that the more fame and so forth you acquire and the more power you acquire and manifest, the more you have to sell everything, including your shirt, as well as your soul. So thank you again. This has been wonderful. And let's get this out there, Subscribe for updates, and look forward to also the part 2, because there's much more that can be spoken about this key issue now that it's finally starting to settle into the spotlight, as well as the details surrounding the case. Until then, JTC channel. Thanks again.